Okay. We'd like you to spend a minute with this little bit of an exercise. Once again, we're not going to take the time to discuss it with the people around us, but rather just treat it straight out. So think back over your life and career to who's played a profound role in shaping who you are and helping you develop into the person you wanted to be. Think of a specific story that captures or encapsulates his or her impact, and how did that make you feel? Spend a couple moments on it. Okay. It's an odd question, but I like this. First off, I don't think we spend enough time in our memories, kind of looking back and thinking about these sort of moments. The other thing I'd say is we don't spend enough time acknowledging those people that have had this kind of profound impact on our life. And so that this is a useful activity. Do any of you have stories or willing to share a story? I'm just going to do a couple of them. That helps to capture what this person did for you and how it made you feel. Brian.
Yeah, so one of my best childhood friends' father passed away on 9/11. He was working in the World Trade Tower, and he was my youth basketball and soccer coach, and he was always extremely outgoing and lived every day like it was his last. Fortunate for him and his family that he lived that way in the beginning, but because of that, I'm really optimistic and always look at the bright side of things, just because you never know when something dramatic could change. So if I have a bad day, I wake up the next morning and it's completely off my mind and everything is positive. And
all right.
Looking forward to the next challenge.
All right, good, great. Anybody got another? It's right there.
So, excuse me, one of my mentors of mine at work, who kind of really shaped me into, I'm an engineer, sort of to be the best engineer I could be towards excellence. Taught me lots of things, but I think one specific story that encapsulates how he made an impact on me was when we had to make a big presentation for 150 people responsible for doing the whole show and everything. And he would force me, along with some other of my colleagues who were junior at the time, to change PowerPoint colors, that he could name the RGB colors of what they had to be and what kind of perfection sort of he demanded out of that, which might seem that it doesn't make an impact, but it really teaches you to learn the attention to detail that you need to get to that next level of excellence that I strive to get to.
Okay, all right, so he pushed your zone a little bit, put you in this situation and said you have to figure it out, and that sort of helped build a sense of confidence, a sense of professional competence, all the rest. Am I with it? Good, great. Anybody else? Okay, Dan?
So this was my boss in my last job. We would have to write these one-page policy proposals to him, and he would set these deadlines, and I'd always meet the deadline or something like that. And he would brought me into the office one time and he said, "Dan, this is fine, but you're working to a deadline, not working to quality." And that kind of like transformed the way that I approached work? Do I care so much about the external interpretation of this that my boss is happy because it's by the deadline and if it's of sufficient quality, or is it something that I'm proud of that it's working to a higher magnitude, higher order of quality?
All right, good. Points that out in you that that was your tendency, but it's not helping you. It's not bringing out your best. You ought to have a different goal in mind here. And once again, help you to get that goal in mind and improve the quality of your work. Okay, one more. Justin? Can we move the...
So mine was actually the first client I ever had, fresh out of undergrad in my first job. And he sat me down and explained, projects are successful, projects fail. Projects are ahead of schedule, behind schedule, over budget, under budget. That doesn't matter. What matters is how people perceive you, how willing they are to work with you. And that helped me look at the relationships you have with your clients. Because if you make the project successful and you run it under budget and you do it ahead of schedule, but they pull their hair out every time they get on the phone with you, you're not going to get hired for the next contract.
Okay. So almost like the importance of, if you will, sort of softer side here, that it's not just about project deadlines and these sort of things. It's about the relationship that you build with them. They're going to be fine with all the rest of that. Good, excellent. I'm sure that many of the others of you have a great story. I hope everybody has a great story like this. I'm going to tell you one that we had a program here for a while called the STAR EMBA, and it was for professional football players. And so I did this exercise with them, and I had this one guy raised his hand to tell a story, and he said, well, I was in football camp, I was about 15 years old, and I was just getting beat up, and I decided that I wanted to come home. And so I called my mom and said, Mom, I want to come home. And she said to me, you can leave football camp, but you can't come home because I didn't raise no bitches. And I thought, that's your inspirational story? But he went on to become a 3-time All-Star. Pro Bowler rather. So it was what he needed to kind of fix his own resolve in his life. So I hope that all of you have a story like this. And what I most hope for you is that somebody someday, when asked this question, will tell a story about you. That's going to be one of your final legacies, your final marks as a leader, is if somebody, when asked that question, says, let me tell you what Hillary did for me. She pulled me aside, she explained it this way, whatever it happens to be. You'll know you're a leader when people can tell that story about you. And it really leads me to this point, that what we remember about this story, about these people, about their impact on us, is how it made us feel. It's how it made us feel. That's what we remember, the specifics of it, or that it helped us master an equation. That's incidental in this process. It's how being able to master that equation made you feel competent, made you feel important, made you feel that you could manage discretion. And whatever it happened to be, what we remember is our feeling. And in this way, leadership is an emotional relationship. So we need to talk a little bit about emotion. Yes, this is your brain. Yes, this is your brain on my PowerPoint. Remember the old commercials about this is your brain, this is your brain on drugs. But anyway, okay, we need a little bit of some basic neurology here for me to explain this there. The brain is typically conceived to be divided, or is divided into 3 primary areas. Okay? It's oftentimes called the tripartite brain. Okay? The first part is this area right here, that tan area in the middle, and that's the reptilian brain. It's called such because it is exactly the same as the brain as reptiles. Okay? This modulates low-level functioning, important, but low-level, like eye blinks, perspiration, galvanic skin response, heart, breath intake, stuff like that. Very basic, but very important. We're not particularly interested in that area. Okay? The second area of the brain is this purple area around here, and that's called the mammalian brain. The mammalian brain is called the mammalian brain because all mammals share this substrate of the brain. Okay? All mammals do. And this area, also called the limbic lobe, is responsible for processing emotions. is responsible for processing emotions. And then all these other colored areas of the brain are what we usually think of when we think about a brain, which is the neocortex. Here's all your higher order functioning. Here's your ability to differentiate stimuli in terms of sight, in terms of distance, to think about what those sort of mean. This is the cognitive part of the brain. Okay? So this is the way the brain is divided up. Now, through PET scans, positron emission topography, and other advances in the medical device world, we've been able to learn an awful lot about the brain that we did not know before. Okay? Particularly what PET scans are able to do is put you under there, ask you questions, give you various different kinds of stimuli, and it can tell where the activity is taking place in your brain, and therefore what part of your brain is being stimulated. With me? The first thing that we know is what's called emotional primacy. We feel before we think. Every sensory neuron in the body, when it's sending the signals to the brain, it goes first to the emotion areas, the limbic lobe, the mammalian brain, before being passed on to the neocortex, the thinking. Now, why would that be so? Why does that make sense?
I suppose our ancestors needed to be able to react subconsciously before they could take the time to think about something.
Exactly. It's fight or flight, right? Okay. So if you hear a loud noise and you go, a loud noise, I think I shall investigate. You know, versus jumping out of the way first, preparing yourself. Your body dumps all these chemicals in it, to alert yourself. It goes to muscle conductivity, all sorts of other things. Now you do that, you find out it's nothing. It was just a door slamming. You're a little embarrassed, but you're alive. Okay? So this is basic survival 101 stuff. Okay? But we've also learned that there is dominant communication from the limbic or the mammalian brain up to the cognitive brain than there is the cognitive brain back down to the mammalian brain. Let me say that again. There are more dendritic connections, okay, that's what the brain uses to communicate, going from the emotion centers to the logic centers than there are going from the logic centers down to the emotion centers. The effect of this is that we can be hijacked by our emotions, right? Because there's more connections going from the emotion to the cognitive than there are coming back from the cognitive to the emotion. We can be hijacked by our emotions. Okay? Let me explain it this way. Have you ever been in love? Okay. All right. Do you remember that love early on? What?
I'm married. I said definitely.
Being married and being in love, I guess, aren't always the same thing, right? Some people, and there's of course different types of love as well. But if you remember, especially early on in that relationship, right? Your brain, your cognitive centers were overwhelmed with the emotion. People would talk to you and say, "No, she's not right for you." You're like, "Stay away from me. You're trying to destroy my life," because you were so overwhelmed by this. Okay, so this gives us some insight into how we need to think as leaders. To be aware that our first response is an emotional response. And here we go to emotional intelligence, right? The ability to feel the emotion, understand the emotion, but check it, because it might not be helpful in this given context. There's nothing wrong with anger. Absolutely nothing wrong with anger. But is it expressed at the right time, at the right person, for the right reasons, and to the right degree? So that anger wells up in you. You've got to be able to, as a leader, check it. Because remember, in the spotlight, emotion's contagious, all these sorts of things, plus the possibility of alienating somebody, degrading them, even though it wasn't really their fault or it was an honest mistake or whatever it is. Okay? So we've got to be aware that emotion is our first impulse, and that our cognitive centers can be overwhelmed by our emotional centers. Number two, emotion is contagious. I've said this a few different times. The limbic system, the mammalian brain, is known as the interpersonal brain. See, you don't know what's going on in my pulmonary system. You don't know what's going on there. You don't know what's going on in various electrical activity systems in my body, but you do know what's going on in my emotions, right? You do see them, and as we've talked about, you start to feel it. Whether it's energy level, whether it's anxiety, whether it's anger, it's all the things we talked about before. Okay? You start to feel it. Now, why would that be the case? Why is it that we actually feel the emotions of other people? Why? Slight variation of what you said before, Tim. It's still a survival value thing, because human beings are not misanthropes. We need one another to survive. And the better able we are to understand the emotions, the better able we are to unify, to work in concert, to sympathize, which helps us work better as a collective. So, yeah, have a microphone over here.
I just had a quick question. I mean, I didn't want to dive too deep into psychology and neural makeup of the brain, but I'm just wondering what the take is on psychopaths in this context, because they had, they're not axe murderers, well, not all of them, but a lot of them they mimic emotion and empathy and sympathy to kind of blend in. There's a lot of leaders that
I'm just going to comment real briefly. We talked about this a little bit in the negotiations class, but psychopaths are able to control the system better than we are. Okay? They just have almost a remarkable ability to modulate their neurofeedback and expression. And that's one of the things that makes them really dangerous. Because a psychopath can look you in the eye and lie to you, where that's hard for any of the rest of us normal people to do. Okay? Because neurologically, by the way, our eyes move up and to the left when we're lying to somebody, because they're accessing the creative centers of the brain. So they got to move up there. Okay? The psychopath, those eyes don't move. Okay? So in other words, they've learned how to control a lot of this stuff. But we could go deeper into that. But psychopathy is not our point here. Okay. So positive emotions. Here's a good one. People who are in a good mood, a positive emotional state, have better memory. They have better recall. They're better able to detect patterns of covariation in data plots. When faced with a problem or presented with a problem, they come up with a larger number of solutions, more creative solutions, and more effective solutions, simply by being in a good mood. It turns out that a positive mood is an intellectual lubricant. It helps us think more swiftly, more carefully, and more efficiently, all at the same time. All at the same time. Okay. There's one great study that was done where this one professor, she taught 2 sections of a class, taught them identically. They came to the exam time. She went to one group and she gave them candy bars before the exam. Okay. And then the other group, she didn't give anything to. Guess what? That group outperformed the other group. Simply because they were in a little bit of a better mood. So, think about this. When you're in a bad mood, are you thinking straight? No. Okay? And there's reasons for that I'm going to touch on now in the next one, which is my favorite of these, which is neurogenesis. Beyond a shadow, neurogenesis. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, we know now that even as adults, you and I can develop brand new neural tissue. Brand new. Now this is really good news for any of us that had too much fun in college. Because I've been telling my whole brain life that all I'm doing is killing brain cells, right? There's this great Simpsons episode where Homer actually has to problem solve to save Marge. Mars, to save Marge. And so that little, kind of cloud appears above his head, and his brain is in it, and he looks up and he goes, look, brain, I don't like you, and you don't like me, but let's just save Marge, and I'll go back to killing you slowly with fear. But it turns out it's not true. We can develop new neural tissue. As a matter of fact, when we learn something new, there's actually a dendritic connection that is formed in the substrates of the brain that represent that learning. However, this is prevented to the extent that a chemical called cortisol is present in your system. And cortisol is the chemical that your body dumps when you're under stress. And it takes cortisol 4 to 6 hours to flush from the system. This is really big. Now, this might help us understand why it is that smart people continue to do the same thing and expect different results, is because they didn't learn it. Because their body is so flush with cortisol that they're really and literally incapable of learning new things. And so they repeat the old behavior again and again and again. Yeah? Microphone.
Aren't there people for whom stress opens up their awareness and makes them perform better?
Okay, that's a very good question. Here we are, okay? Here's performance. And here's stress. Okay, I'm going to call it something else here. The more stress, the better, up to a point. And then performance goes down. Because up to here, excuse me, you and I call it challenge. Everybody likes a challenge. And the more challenged we are, the better we perform, right? If you have a simple task to do, we oftentimes don't do very well on a simple task because it's too simple. If it was harder, we would do better. It's kind of paradoxical that way, but it's true. I think you all know what I'm talking about. It's like when you don't have a lot to do, you don't do much. When you have a lot to do, you get a lot of things done. Okay? And a lot of things in addition to the stuff that you have to do. Okay? So at this point, what happens is there is a neurological switch that goes off. And this study was just published in the Journal of Science in July. That takes us from being to the point where we persevere, where we're indefatigable in our pursuit of this, when we're optimistic about our ability to achieve it, and boom, the switch is thrown, and all of a sudden we're pessimistic, our energy levels go down, our gentle emotional and mental health is damaged. Okay? Because it hits that point. Now that point's going to vary for different people, of course, right? Because we all have different central nervous systems. Okay, so it's going to vary for a different point. So that's what I think we get to here, is that up to a point, it's actually enhancing our performance, and then it gets to be too much. I just had, you guys might have seen it, and no you didn't because I've been emailing you via Blackboard, but it's in my signature in my regular email. I just had a Harvard Business Review article up here, and it's on exactly this. Exactly this, and it uses Mary Barra, CEO of General Motors, as the example. Okay, the poor woman took the job on January 1. By March 1, GE had to recall 15 million cars. By June 1, they'd had to recall 28 million cars. Okay. Can you imagine being Mary Barra right now? Her body must be just drowning in cortisol. So used her as the basis to point this new scientific finding out, and then go to exactly what I'm going to now, which is all of us have a lot of stress. So what we need to do is learn to deal with the stress. And what's also in this HBR article is, and it's named for this, is what I call sources of renewal for leaders. What are things, common sense things, you and I can do to renew ourselves, to help flush the cortisol sooner, more quickly? What are things we can do?
Exercise.
Exercise. Okay, all exercise is doing, its main function is it increases the metabolism. Okay? When the metabolism is increased, that means that things are simply working more efficiently, right? That means it takes any chemical in the body and it moves it through quicker, just like it does calories, right? Okay, all a calorie is a chemical, okay, and it moves, it burns those calories quicker and more efficiently. It does the same thing with cortisol. Exercise.
Scheduled breaks.
Pardon?
Scheduled breaks.
Scheduled breaks. Build in time to be away from this. Now the problem with a lot of us is we schedule a break, we get a cup of coffee, and we sit right back down on our phone. So you've got to watch that as well. Take the break, okay? And the break might mean going, sitting on a bench out in the middle of the quad or whatever it has to be, which is funny because I do that every afternoon and I see Greg so often. You know, we're just on the same sort of schedule that he walks up and I'm trying to sit there quietly to reflect a little bit and he always has to sit down and chat with me. And so it's just, oh my God, did I say that out loud? I meant to just think that. Okay, yeah, other things.
I guess some of the examples that you mentioned was playing a game.
Okay, playing a game?
Playing a game, video games.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, because one of the things that games do, okay, whether it's poker, whether it's Monopoly, whether it's Parcheesi, whatever it happens to be, is we're not thinking about all the rest of this stuff now, are we? Okay? We're immersed in the game. The game is what's really kind of taking all of our cognitive space away from us, and it feels good, and it's fun to play the game. Okay? So now we've got another chemical that's being released called norepinephrine. And norepinephrine is a happy chemical. We want more norepinephrine, and it makes us feel good, and that also counteracts the effect of cortisol. Jeremy?
Find something to laugh at.
Find something to laugh at it. Okay? Laughter is the best medicine. It turns out it's true, and there's hard evidence for it. Okay? Once again, because laughter helps to release cortisol, or norepinephrine, and that helps this chain that I just described here. Find something to laugh at. Okay? The problem I find with this is I'll get on YouTube to find something. Okay? A little bit, whatever. I'm feeling like I've had a bad day or something. I'm looking for something to renew my faith in humanity. I'll get on YouTube. I'll find this little clip of Chris Rock or whatever, and it's making me laugh. And then I go to another one, and then I find another one, and then another one, another one. Next thing you know, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I've been sitting there for 4 hours. And I'm like, damn, I had to be up in 6 hours. And so that's the only problem with, a general problem with YouTube, by the way. It's just absolutely terrible. So, yeah.
Rest and sleep.
Rest and sleep. Okay, let's go to 2 things here. Now, everybody has different diurnal cycles. So some people need more sleep than other people. Other people function perfectly well with 6 hours of sleep. Personally, being very honest with you, I need 10. And that's no joke. I need 10 hours of sleep to function well. Okay? We all need different ones. I don't know how to tell you what you need, but I will tell you if you're dragging all day long, if you don't feel well, if your thinking is a little muddle-headed, you're not getting enough sleep. Okay? Find the time to get more sleep.
Talk to your friends.
Okay, any sort of social interaction. I'm going to come back to that one in a moment. Here's one. Okay.
Play with puppies and kittens.
Oh. Oh my gosh. Yes. How did you know? Well, I mean, her point is exactly right, because there is sort of, this little innocence and just how they just want to have fun and they roll over and, all those sort of things. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's a good activity. Caring for them is a different thing. Playing with them is fine. If you could just sort of, oh God, this would be a great service. This would be a great business, right? You just have a puppy kitten rental service. And so you bring them over, you pay by the hour, here they are, you don't have to take care of them, mess around. And I know they have pet therapy and things like that are out there, animal-based therapy, not therapy for the pets. But actually they do have therapy for pets these days. But nevertheless, it would be a good business model, don't you think? Let's all collaborate. Did they already do it?
They already do it.
Really? You can rent kittens?
Yeah.
That's so cruel. It wouldn't be so cruel if I did it, but if somebody else did it, I'm going to call that exploitive of the kittens. Okay, let's fight for kitten rights. Okay, now somebody, when they had said sleep, also used the word rest. Okay, take your vacations seriously. Do not take this on vacation. Because you know what? You'll sit on the beach and you'll answer emails, won't you? Because that whole organization is going to fall apart if you're not there. Okay? That's what I call the indispensability syndrome. It's that we think we're so important, okay, that we have to constantly stay in touch. And we do this for psychological reasons because we want to think we're important, right? And then everything's going to go bad if we're not there. It's not true, by the way. Okay? Things are going to go fine. This company has been up and running for a long time. You're not as important as you think you are. I'm sorry to tell you. Okay? But take your vacation seriously. And by the way, when you're in a position of being a boss or a leader, make sure your employees do the same thing. Okay? You send them away for that 2-week vacation and you say, here's the deal. I'm shutting down your email. Okay? I'm telling everybody in this unit they cannot contact you in any event. Okay? You go take your vacation. You need it to renew. You need it to replenish. Take it seriously and make those people around you take it seriously as well. Okay? Your family members that you go on vacation with, everybody, tell them to put it down and rest.
Is there any truth to that creating more stress? That although you have those 2 weeks off, then you're just stressing that whole time, thinking about how
Yep.
many emails you're going to have
Yep.
when you get back?
Last 2 days. Okay? Right? You guys have seen this. First couple days, you're nervous. And then you get into the 3rd day, and you're like, oh, this feels pretty good. You know, next thing you know, you're like, work? I don't know, I had a job. So it takes a couple days to get over it. On average, it's 2 days. But I'm sure you, and that's part of the reason why short vacations, that's great. Get away from them for a week, or a weekend or something. But when you do that, make it count. Okay, be very clear with yourself about what you're doing and make an effort to sort of get that out of your head before you go. You've got 2 days to renew now. See if you can accelerate that cycle. Okay. Good. Anything else? Throw a few out here. Prayer, meditation. Okay. Really interesting research coming out on transcendental meditation this day, which I don't think, frankly, is fundamentally different than prayer. Hobbies. Okay. Cooking, stamp collecting, model building. The great thing about hobbies is that it kind of whisks you away, right? You're in the middle of this thing. I don't know about any of you, but I cook. That's one of my hobbies. And when I'm in the kitchen, man, I'm in the kitchen. I got a little dead can dance going on in the background, glass of wine in my hand. Wow, I can cook for like several hours, and it feels like it was just a few minutes. Okay, because I'm just so into it, and I'm thinking the thing through, and I don't use recipes, so I'm creating at the same time, and so it's just really a wonderful experience. And by the way, watching football is not a hobby. It has to be something active. It has to be something active for it to have the effect. Either activating your mind, crossword puzzles, things like that, okay, or being physically active in some way. Okay, so challenge moving you. Yeah.
What about a sport that you play that you're not good at? Like I've heard this anecdote about people who go say golf is my hobby, but they get so angry on the golf course
Right.
because they're so not good at it.
Right.
Like myself.
Yeah.
Does
Yeah.
that count as a stress for the hobby?
Okay, back to Winston Churchill. This is what he said about golf. Golf is an ineffectual attempt to direct an uncontrollable sphere into an inaccessible hole with tools ill-adapted to serve the purpose. Okay? So, and he also said about golf, it's a good walk sport. Okay? So, I think that there are kind of sports that you can engage in. You know, you're out playing basketball, you're shooting some hoop with some people, you're getting physical exercise there. You know this person's better than you, but you're not a bad basketball player. I think that you're describing a situation where actually that could be deleterious. Okay? And that's why so many men fall dead on the golf course. I don't know this for sure, but it's certainly not an uncommon thing, right? To read an obituary about how this guy died doing what he most loved on the 13th hole. Well, maybe that's what killed him. I don't know. Just maybe. Okay. Another part of this, and this is all part of the study that I've been doing, is part of it, which is in the article I mentioned, is that we all need another place, a third place. Okay, this is actually based on some urban design research. As a matter of fact, Washington was recently named the #1 urban walkable city in the country. And part of this idea is creating public spaces where you could get away from things, right? It felt sort of like a different world, parks and things like that. And they use the term the third place. And we've all got three places. We've got home, which is work. We've got work, which is work. Okay? But we all need a third place. Some place we go where none of this is bothering us anymore. Okay? So in my survey, I asked all these executives, got 127 people in this, where their third place was. Okay? Had all sorts of responses, compiled them, categorized them. But one of the most interesting things was this difference that emerged between men and women. Okay? So there was a pretty strong gender difference in this particular case in terms of third place. What do you think women reported statistically higher in terms of what their third place was? What was their third place? No. Getting there, the spa. Okay, some sort of variation of the spa, right? Where I'm being taken care of, I can kind of just melt away for a little bit. What do you think men's number one third place was?
Bar.
The bar, of course. It was the tavern. It was Cheers, right? Where everyone knows your name, okay? And all your troubles fade away, all the rest of it. So, we need to learn, to renew, to replenish ourselves, to experience the wonder of neurogenesis. We need to take care of ourselves in all of these different ways. Okay? Another simple one, by the way, that we didn't mention, diet. Okay, and I don't mean dieting, I mean diet. Okay, just eating a well-balanced meals. Okay. And then decision making. I think this is an interesting one as well. If there's damage to the left prefrontal cortex of the brain, which is this area right up here. This is usually because of some sort of scoliolar insult. For example, you get hit from behind and you bang your head on the steering wheel or something like that. Now, you're fine. Your memory's fine. It's not, your motor function is fine, all the rest of it. But this is the area of the brain that lights up under PET scans. There's a lot of electrical activity going on there. Lights up when we think of hope and possibility. Hope and possibility. So people that have damage to this area of the brain have difficulty making even the most simple of decisions, like what pair of socks to wear. So why would your ability to make decisions be compromised because the area of your brain that processes hope and possibility was compromised? Where's the connection there? Because in the end, all decisions are matters of hope. I hope this works out. Right? You don't know for sure, right? They're leaps of faith. I'm going to do this. I'm going to invest my money here. I'm going to start this business. I'm going to take this job. I'm going to marry this person. Okay? All of those decisions are hope. All of our decisions are hope. We don't know what's going to happen. Okay? So we have to have hope present in our brain to make decisions to move forward with life, to recognize the possibilities that are there. And this is part and parcel of leadership, right? Okay? I need to be able to hope that this is going to work out, that there's a possibility for this, and I need to encourage it and the people around me as well. That there's hope, that there's a possibility that is exciting out there. Hope is a powerful thing. Do you remember was written on the bottom of Pandora's box? One word, hope. So with all of the disease that it introduced into the world, with all of the sufferings, at the bottom of the box is the word hope. Okay? So it's one of the most important things that we have, and if it's damaged, it prevents our ability to make decisions, and if you're a leader and you can't make decisions because you don't hope that it can happen, you don't believe in the possibility, you're not going to be particularly inspiring. So, once again, let's go to the 2x2 deal. Okay? So, again, I'm simplifying things. Two dimensions I'd like you to think about. First is emotional tone, which we've been talking about. Okay? Setting a positive or a negative emotional tone, and I know that this is obviously a continuum, that it's not taxometric, but we're treating it this way for expository purposes. Okay? And then on the left-hand side, synchrony. Okay? And all I mean by synchrony is that I understand you. I'm in sync with you. I get what's important to you. I'm one of you. Okay? As a leader, I'm one of you. I'm not just for you, I'm not just of you, I am one of you. Okay? So that's being in sync with the people around you. Now, if you set a positive emotional tone, job one of a leader for all the reasons we talked about. Okay? So you're making people, by setting a positive emotional tone, you're making them like to come to work. You're creating a sense of excitement in coming to work. Okay? You're improving their ability to work, which means they feel more competent. Look at what you're doing by setting a positive emotional tone. Enormous. And if you're in sync with those people, you get them. You understand the struggles. You sat in that chair. You understand what they see, and you're sympathetic to it. And you'll take energy, and you'll use resources to back them up and support them. You have the potential to be a resonant leader. So if you do those two things, you have the possibility to be a resonant leader. And you think about the word resonant, right? To resonate with, meaning sort of a similar frequency. So I'm helping you by creating this positive tone, work better, feel better, be more excited, and I get it from your perspective. This is a lot of what we've been talking about in leadership and about what leadership is. Give me a minute, Jeremy, to work through a few things. Okay. And here is negative emotional tone, but you're in sync. But you're in sync, so you get these people, you get where they're coming from, you understand their struggles, but you're setting a negative emotional tone, you're a demagogue. Give me an example. Give me an example of someone who set a negative emotional tone but was in perfect sync with the people he was leading.
Steve Jobs. Like they had infamous sessions where he would just yell at people.
True, yeah. I'm looking maybe for something, and I'm not saying that that's wrong at all. I'm looking for something that's sort of cleaner, that everybody would exercise. And it's a political figure from World War II, just a little hint. Okay, Hitler, obviously, right? I mean, this guy was a genius in terms of abstract thinking, communication skills, confidence, all the stuff we talked about. He understood the German people very, very deeply. He knew what they felt after World War I, how they felt marginalized from the international community, how they felt that they were completely out of control of their own destiny. He got it. He understood that they were looking for a scapegoat, and he found the scapegoat. Okay? All in a very negative emotional tone. Okay? But he was capable of moving people to great lengths. But where did he move them to is the question. So here we have somebody positive emotional tone, but isn't in sync. They're a clueless leader. Okay, so hey everybody, this is great, but I don't get where you're going or what's important to you. I'm fairly clueless, aren't I? I don't have much going on. I don't have much credibility with you. You appreciate the fact that I set this positive tone, but I don't know where you're going, so how can I help lead you there, support you there? When I first came to GW, the chair of the department that I'm in had been the chair for 34 years. He had completely lost sight of what it was to be an academic because that world has changed. It's changed a lot. Okay? Back when he started, it was a bucolic occupation, where you taught your classes and they sat around and talked big ideas and things like that, and that was it. Okay? Today, it's publish or perish. Okay? Most young professors work 60, 70 hours a week because you have to. The rejection rates in the good journals are around 95%. Okay? So there's a 5% chance your paper is going to make it. So, and you need 6 of those babies need to be considered for tenure. Okay? So the world has changed. He didn't get it. He didn't get it. Okay? Wonderful guy. And as soon as this younger faculty had taken over in terms of numerically and had the majority of votes, we voted him out. Okay? Everybody loved him. Great guy. Happy to have him around. But you can't lead us. You're incapable of leading us because you're not in sync. Okay? And then finally, of course, somebody who does neither of those, that would be a distant. Okay. Jeremy,
This may fit in, but
microphone up, please.
One of the things I've always noticed in people that I consider leaders, whether they were a business executive or like a coach, is they always seem to have this trait of being able to just come up with a random speech at the drop of a dime, just
Okay.
ever be inspirational. Where does that come from? Is that a trait of being a resident leader, or where does that come from? Where they just come up with like a random speech?
Yeah, well, I mean, first off, that's the skill of extemporaneous speaking, right? So now we're back to verbal skills, right? That I've got good verbal skills. The second thing is we get to extroversion, as it really is, not Myers-Briggs version, and situation sensing. So I see what's going on, okay? I pick it up, and I'm good verbally. So at this moment, I can pull something out of my hat that resonates with people because I get where they're coming from, I understand the situation, and I've got verbal skills. So I think that that would be the explanation for it, at least using the concepts and ideas that we put up.